Erev Tov, Chodesh Tov. Rashi comments, as do all the other Meforshim, why the double language appears at the beginning of this week's Parsha. Emor al HaKohanim b'nei Aaron ve'omarta lahem. So it already said, Emor lahem, why does it say again, ve'omarta lahem? So Rashi here quotes the Torah's Kohanim, which on the surface is difficult to understand. Rashi says, Lahazir Agdole Malaktanim, that the double mention of Hilmarta, of telling the children of Aaron, is that the fathers or the elders or the previous generation have a responsibility to tell it, to warn the Ktanim about the restrictions of the Kuna. So the Meforshim all are troubled. That is, so to speak, a rule in every family, not just for Kohanim. V'shinamtam levanecha. All of Judaism is based upon the fact that an older generation will instruct a younger generation in order to maintain the tradition and the chain that the Jewish people and Jewish life represents from Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai till our time. So what's special here that the Torah used a double language, so to speak? They used the verb twice. Why is it more by Kohanim than it is by anyone else? So there are many interpretations here. One of them is because the Kohen has special halachot that other Jews don't have. L'nefesh lo yitama be'amov, Kohen doesn't, not allowed to attend, to have contact with a mace, to attend funerals. Kohen is not allowed to marry certain women that other Jews are allowed to marry. A grusha, a woman that has been married previously. Kohen is restricted. So when there are additional restrictions, then there are additional obligations of education. Because the child or the next generation will say, you know, if Yankel can marry this woman, then why can't I marry it? Why can't I marry her? And we live in such a time. In my experience in Rabbonos, I've had many cases. You have Kohanim that have come to me to try and find a way out. They're in love with a woman that's a grusha, that she's previously divorced, or a gioris. So there's sometimes the cases are emergency. I remember one case that I had many years ago. So I was supposed to perform at a wedding. It was in Miami Beach. And in the run up to the wedding, it became obvious to me that the bride was an adopted girl. And even though she was raised in a religious home, but we don't know who her biological parents were. There was a time in the United States when you could not find out, where it was hidden. That has changed over the past decades, which has brought other problems with it. But then you couldn't find out, it was sealed. So, what is she? She's never been married before, but what is she? Can a Kohen marry her? So the simple explanation, solution in other cases was that she underwent the process of conversion since she was an observant girl. So she went through the formal process, and a Yisrael can marry a Geuris, but a Kohen cannot. And so what happens here? So I had a remarkable experience then with Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who had the broadest shoulders of any Jew that I ever knew. There are a number of Rabbi Moshe Feinsteins. There is the Rosh Yeshiva that wrote on the Talmud, great halachic works. There's a Rabbi Feinstein, that's the posek that wrote the Igros Moshe, which is until today should be a basic text for anybody in the rabbinate in modern Jewish life. There's a third Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who is all oral. You met, decided matters, never wrote them down, and you could, so to speak, never quote him on it. But he undertook enormous problems. And because he cared for the Jewish people so, he felt their pain. And many times people find themselves in situations that they never imagined, and they don't intend, God forbid, to violate halacha. But what do you do? So then I was young and brash and bold. So you take a plane up to New York and you go to FDR Drive, Grand Avenue. And you have a discussion with the great man. So I remember that he thought about it, and he thought about it, and he thought about it. And he said, the problem that you raise is a problem because it's lachatchila. They're not married yet. They're not married yet. He said, I really don't see a way out. If they get married, he said, then come see me. So I came back and I said, I can't perform the wedding because Rabbi Feinstein said they shouldn't get married. But the rule in Jewish life is there's always another rabbi. It's in all circumstances, you should know that. So they found another rabbi, and the other rabbi, I don't say he did it purposely, he may not have known, he may not have checked, but then they got married. So a year later, the woman is having a child. And what should be the status of that child? The husband's going to raise him as a Kohen. He's a cholol. What is he? So then I went to see Rabbi Feinstein again. And I said to him, you know, I'm coming now on a b'diavad. I didn't marry the couple, but somehow they had chuppah kedushin, and they had the legitimate chuppah kedushin. So what should we do now? So he said, you have to treat the child as a Yisrael, he said, not as a Cholol, as a Yisrael. Because he said, if they got married and in heaven they let them get married this way, Mistam is nit given kinkeyen. The groom wasn't really a Kohen. And then he said, you know, when Jews came to America, he said, there were plenty of charlatans, plenty of cheaters. So there were people that said that they were Kohanim because they wanted to get the $5 for the Pidyon Haben. So he said, who says he's a Kohen? How can he prove he's a Kohen? Today, no one can prove they're a Kohen. That's why, for instance, Truma here in Eretz Yisrael is not given to the Kohanim. It's rather thrown into the Mediterranean because nobody can prove they're a Kohen. So on certain matters, you know, if he wants an Aliyah as a Kohen, is there a Kohen? He wants to duchen, he can duchen. Jews can also give brachas. He wants to be machmir, not to be matamid lameis. Wonderful. But who says he's a Kohen regarding yichus? So he said, you treat the child as a regular Yisrael. So I told him that it would be an anomaly because they'd call up the father, you know, Yitzchak ben Avram HaKohen, and they'll call up the kid, Avram ben Yitzchak, period, for Shlishi, as a Yisrael. So he said the famous idea to me, he said, nobody pays attention to what the Gabbai does. Don't worry about it. So the Kohanim have a special halacha. They have a special status. In order to make them understand their special status, the Torah gave them halachas. To understand what it is to be a Kohen. So that's why it says the Lashon, Daber el b'nei Aaron, Emor el b'nei Aaron. First tell them they're b'nei Aaron. That they should know who they are. What their yichus is. Their zayda is Aaron HaKohen. If they'll appreciate that they're b'nei Aaron, then v'amarta lahem, then you can tell them all these halachas and they will accept them. Because they will realize that they have this exalted status within the Jewish people. But if a person feels that he is not special, so then why should he be discriminated against? Why should he have a greater burden than other people have? One of the great breaches that has occurred, certainly much more in the exile than here, is that the Kohanim marry whoever they want to, and you get a rabbi to do it, and that's it. It's over. All the yeshivas that deal here with Balei Tshuva wrestle with that problem almost on a daily basis. It comes with he says his father's a Kohen, so he's a Kohen, except his father, his mother is a divorcee. So what do you do then? He's a cholel. So how do you deal with that? So there are difficult questions. And every question has to be dealt with individually without a general rule. But the concept is there. The concept is Amor LaKohanim B'nei Aaron. First tell them who they are. Then V'amarta Lahem, then you can tell them halachas, and you can be Yotze, your responsibility, Lahazir Hagdolim Alaktanim. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashi Omer Ratzah Kodesh Baruch Hu L'Zakon Yisrael V'chichol Hibra Lahem Torah and Mitzvot Shenamar Adonai Chafetz Aman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.